All right. Hello and welcome in, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of our Winter Career Quest series. It's fantastic to see so many of you here and ready to explore exciting career opportunities in the world of AI security. My name is Hong Win, and I'm part of the Careers and Professional Development team here at WGU. And it's my privilege to introduce our incredible guest speaker today. We are thrilled to welcome back Kris Kimmerle, Head of AI Security and Strategy at Aon. Kris has been a phenomenal support to our WGU community, having previously joined us for our very first Cyber Week. Not only is he a great expert in the rapidly evolving field of AI security, but he's also an inspiring leader who continues to empower and educate those in this dynamic industry. Today, Kris will be sharing his insights on starting your career in AI security, covering everything you need to know from emerging trends to practical advice for breaking into this thriving space. So, with that, Kris, I'm very excited to pass the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, and WGU for letting me come here and speak. And for those who are attending, this talk is going to be largely based on giving you some utility. I want to make sure that you walk away from this having some sense of where to go, what the landscape looks like, and where we're going next. I am going to level set by kind of introducing myself, my role. I work at Aon. I am the head of AI security and strategy within our division of cyber solutions, which is largely focused on client-facing opportunities, which is to say how we can support our clients out in the cybersecurity space. And in this capacity, my role really hits on three really core important elements. I have to think about how we mobilize our global consulting workforce towards opportunities in this space. How do we properly skill up those resources so they can actually tackle this in a way that would make sense for our clients? What are partners or technologies that we should be leveraging that would enable this workforce? And then as we think about this technology within our firm broadly, opining on and providing security steering to the larger enterprise. Now, I've been in cybersecurity for over 25 years, and I've been focused on AI, specifically AI, for about 4 years. I'm new to this position. I've been in this position for about a year and a half now, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be a part of it. AI is absolutely energizing and exciting, and I'll tell you, there's no better time to get involved now. So if this is an exciting topic for you, I'm going to try to give you as much as I can to get you started. We're going to cover a lot. So the recording here, if you feel like you missed anything, be sure to check out that information. So I always like opening up with what I consider to be kind of the zeitgeist of AI. What are the themes and topics right now in the world when we think about artificial intelligence? So really, everyone really wants artificial intelligence. And I use this term, and I'm going to use it through this talk in a very broad context. Sometimes we'll get in some really specific applications, and we'll talk about the technology in a very nuanced way. But at the end of the day, everyone really wants artificial intelligence. They want this in their applications. They want this in their enterprise. They want this for their colleagues, for their employees. They want this individually to leverage it in their company. And the feeling of missing out is incredibly potent. Not having it feels left behind, like you're missing the bus. So the FOMO energy is very real. Everyone largely in a very crazy time for an emerging technology has access to artificial intelligence. Basically, if you have a mobile phone at this point and are able to call 1-800-CHAT-GPT, I think is the extension, then you can access AI. AI is everywhere. And really, we're kind of hitting on generative AI. If we're being correct and I guess honest, AI has been with us since the 1950s. It's been around us and through us, and everything that we pretty much operate and use, from Netflix to what used to be Twitter, X, all of the algorithms that would drive feeds for you. AI has been at the center of it. For better or for worse, AI has been with us for a long time, and generative AI has really captured the magic for a lot of people around the world. AI is not monolithic. And what I mean by that is it's really easy to actually pull down a model for an enterprise use case and then deploy this for specific use cases, or to plug into an API and use it for a larger set of services. There's ways for you to bring artificial intelligence, especially generative AI, into your work environment with relative ease. And this shows with startups, the number of startups that are coming out trying to promote a specific solution or technology. It's an incredible enabler, and it's very easy to adopt it. To build it, to actually go after generative AI, it requires so much data. There is a huge need for talent in this, to build it, to deploy it, to manage it thereafter. The opportunity space for professionals is incredibly rich, despite the rhetoric around AI replacing knowledge workers or replacing technical experts. There will always be a need for us, for people, for humans, and that has never been more true now. When you can look at all of the jobs that are being posted from any given lab or major provider, they're trying to grab more people that are focused on AI. And AI is absolutely dominating the career conversation right now. And it does not matter if it's security, IT, it can be nascent or totally adjacent work or fields like HR. AI is important in every field of work right now. And unfortunately, there are few professionals who really understand how generative AI works. And some of this is by design. It's a black box technology, but there is still to really the surrounding infrastructure, how it works, how you leverage it, how you actually put this into your code, what are best practices around that, how do you secure that? I mean, this right here is something I want to emphasize. There is a massive shortage of talent who understand how this works, who can then apply that technology, most importantly, at least for me, how you can secure it. And this is a bit of a side from safety, which is a whole different kind of conversation. We're really just focusing on cybersecurity here. And so when I say AI security, a question is like, I'd like to kind of define that. What is AI security? How do we actually consider AI security in the bigger ecosystem? It's really simple to understand. At least I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. You have a traditional foundation for cybersecurity, and I'm going to try to walk through that here. This diagram serves as kind of an illustration where you see traditional security and AI security overlapping. What that is traditional security is always going to be important. You'll hear this with any emerging technology that if you apply best practices, if you implement the firewalls, if you apply zero trust, it's some more advanced context, if you do things that are going to help secure your infrastructure, you're going to do the right kind of configs on your containers, if you're going to put in the right access controls and implement the right kind of identity management program, you're going to go quite a long way in securing your AI, either application solutions or infrastructure. The AI specific layer really focuses on models. Then we get into a double click on data. Data has always been important, and data security and data protection are really well-established fields of work that are only more now important with the inclusion of AI. Now we think about artificial intelligence, specifically generative AI, in this context of almost securing a person. How do we prevent these models from being manipulated? How do we prevent, if we're creating them, the theft of these models? How do we safeguard them so they're not escrowed? How do we prevent someone from using the model and trying to reverse engineer them or get some kind of understanding of what they've done to do it? How do we prevent really complex problems like poisoning attacks, things that would allow the model to go retrieve information it shouldn't? How do we protect data access and data controls that exist today that go into an embedding system, into a vector database? And what that means is they turn into numbers. How do we preserve data access control in that ecosystem? These are still open challenges. It's very, very difficult to deal with, but AI security is really expanding the attack surface right now when it comes to cybersecurity, but it really plays on the foundation. And all of these work in an ecosystem. None of them operate in isolation. So AI security is nothing without just the foundation of cybersecurity. That's very, very important. And one of the things that I would stress with AI security in particular is from a real technical view, software development, application security is by and large one of the most important areas or domains that you could look at when you think about wanting to get into AI security. There is ripe opportunity for how code is being deployed and specifically what people are doing in those solutions. I'm going to just drop a little nugget and say, if you look at Anthropic's computer use tool, which is the ability to kind of deploy in a container Anthropic's AI model Claude and give it the ability to control a virtual machine. This is great in concept and it kind of works really well. But if you actually look at the code, there are some incredibly insecure practices here. And they do their best to kind of note that these things can be insecure, but this is really just a tease to what's coming. That standard of having AI take control and become kind of the operator is going to start emerging in 2025, but it's only going to accelerate after that. So knowing how to securely code and knowing what practices you should follow goes a very long way, and I would say is one of the more coveted skills right now in this field. So I'm going to do my best to do an abstract. I'm going to try to break down what I think are some of the major categories for AI security. And this is not exhaustive, so you're not going to see exactly what kind of jobs and roles that might exist, but I do want to lay them out on a bit of a continuum and say, hey, look, here are really what we see in the space, and here's some less technical to more technical roles. Now, I like to open up with first, on the less technical side, we have AI compliance specialists. This can manifest in a bunch of different levels, meaning you can have a leader, you can have a manager, but you can have someone who's really technical, boots on the ground, and looking at this from what emerging regulations are here, how are legal frameworks evolving, like the EU AI Act, what is the critical legislation that you need to pay attention to, what are the complex compliance challenges that you're facing. All of these elements are really difficult. While it's less technical, I would argue there is a good argument here to say that being a professional and focusing on the legalese and the compliance elements of AI is so hard right now. You really need to understand cybersecurity compliance. You need to understand data compliance, GDPR, CCPA, things like that. Now you have to also pay attention to how individual regions or states are incorporating state law and regulations. You need to understand how international, more larger kind of acts like the EU AI Act are shaping the world, and these global standards are coming forward. The penalties for non-compliance are huge. So this role is really difficult and incredibly important. It's also emerging. So another one we're seeing is responsible AI product management. This takes on a few different shapes, but this is where you have the bridge between kind of ethics on AI principles and the business's goals. So how do you balance a bit of a technical understanding on this technology with project management? Then how do you look at that and say, okay, I need to communicate, OKRs, KPIs, specific objectives and goals to the other stakeholders in my area, as well as managing the people who are really deploying this solution. It's very difficult, very new. Responsible AI and trustworthy AI can also take on different definitions depending on where you go. Microsoft has a very clear definition of it. NIST has a very clear definition of trustworthy AI. Depending on if you go to a different cloud provider, you might see kind of a different pivot here. Ultimately, there's overlap and there's kind of a shared view on this, but no, there's going to be a bit of nuance in how people approach the concept of responsible AI. It is definitely an umbrella concept. It doesn't mean one thing. It means many different things. You need to care about bias. You need to have some foot in compliance and legal. You need to think about security. You need to think about the implications for your users and how you're properly setting up the application so that it gives them the right kind of warnings, it gives them the right kind of notice. You need to think about how you manage it through its life cycle. Responsible AI is that kind of level that sits above everything. It's not necessarily in the weeds, but really as an oversight role. And then as we get more technical, we think about AI security consultants. And this really can be external or internal to a company, but I think of this role as more of a generalist approach. This is when you have someone who is really focused on strategic planning for this technology, and they also have the technical know-how to consider implementation risks, to consider deployment risks. They have a pretty good idea of how to identify AI-centric risks and then advise those organizations on best practices. So what do I need to do if I'm encountering a specific challenge? And this role really is an ideal fit for anyone who likes having a lot of variety in their work. There's going to be a new challenge every single day, and it's going to be in a completely different domain, but it's really, really exciting and it keeps evolving. After that, we really get into a more technical road on AI red teaming, something I think is really exciting and fun. If we had to break this down, this is offensive security. This is about attacking these systems. It's a very, very technical field. Now, red teaming in AI can take on different contexts that get into most social behavior manipulation, where you're trying to convince the system based on specific semantics, trying to trip it up in its logic and mess with the system, to getting into the real technical nuances of how tokens work and how that information, the text we submitted into a prompt, gets converted to tokens, and how you can abuse that logic to potentially get around guardrails and safeguards. But all of this really is an important piece, if not one of the most important pieces, when we think about testing and deploying this technology. It's really hands-on problem solving. And it doesn't just stop with AI. It can focus exclusively on some of the things I mentioned, like models, but it can also go into looking at your code and making sure you've implemented the right kind of code. So have you implemented or applied secure coding practices? What about penetration testing? So looking at a big level, looking at how you can actually get into the serving infrastructure of the network and actually understand what's wrong. Adversarial machine learning is another concept around this too, where you can see how you try to trick specific security cameras to thinking that an individual, based on what they're wearing, is not real. And this can show up in cars and other CCTV systems. But ultimately, in this context, they're trying to identify a weakness in the larger system and then provide that information back in an ethical way so that they can actually address them and fix it. And then finally, a bit more open-ended, we have this R&D, research and development role when it comes to AI security, and some awesome things happen in this space. This is really when we're talking about going into the nebulous, open-ended problem space. What can AI be used for that is potentially bad? So how can cyber for AI is the concept around this? How can we leverage AI for cybersecurity? So how can we put this into our technology? You see AI has been in most workflows and most automation workflows for almost all major cybersecurity products out there. Now, if we think about it, how can AI be used to attack these systems at the same time, or attack general IT infrastructure? This is another really great space. All of these open-ended problems, how we can abuse these models, how we can trick them, how we can take advantage of the serving infrastructure behind them, all of that is here. You're looking at the unknown and the uncertainty. You want to be able to take these insights and either apply them as a standard that you can deploy to the broader community. So this is what you shouldn't do when you're thinking about it. These are some security best practices. These are some techniques like context-free grammar rules. There's some incredibly advanced concepts that you can deploy here or learn and then deploy in the larger ecosystem, as well as new innovations that might be able to land in your product and make them that much better because of your research. Each role, no matter what we look at, really is going to require a mixed set of skills. Nothing's just going to be one way or the other. There's going to be some level of communication, project management, and technical aptitude that is required. But if you had to look at what direction you're going, this should give you some kind of spectrum, a little bit of a barometer on what is and maybe where you want to go. Now, it's helpful to kind of get the roles level set, but everyone starts this differently. So it's great to understand what's out there. One of the biggest things I hear about is, how do I get into it? How do I actually get into AI security? The truth is, everyone has a different starting point for this. I'm going to give you 3 categorical examples. They're not necessarily all encompassing. Nothing in this talk is going to be absolute, but it's going to give you kind of a starting point. So that if you had to think about the first location, I'm a student, I'm in college. That's the first door. Well, at this point, you're really focusing on your foundational skills. You want to get your programming and general AI principles under your belt. You want to learn the basics of cybersecurity. At this stage, internships, certifications, personal projects are very important to you. You want to try to demonstrate your capability either directly or through these projects in whatever way you can. Later in this talk, I'm going to actually explore some of those examples. So outside of being a student, there's another option where, hey, I'm in an unrelated job and I want to pivot. I want to go into something that I think is more interesting. AI security is more interesting. That could be a non-technical job. It could be something completely unrelated. It really doesn't need to be honed into anything. In that case, your challenge is to identify what transferable skills you have, what would make sense with what you do right now that would apply directly to this. There will not be a one-for-one. You will not be able to go from being a construction worker to being an AI security specialist. There's going to be a delta. There's going to be a gap, but you can take something like communication skills. Maybe you have great communication skills. That's universal. Maybe you have really good project management skills. Maybe you have fantastic expectation management skills, business acumen. Things like this are transferable skills that you can lean into and kind of check the box and move on to the things that you might have a delta in. You want to also pair this with something like, hey, I'm looking to try to get into this field. How can I demonstrate? Well, certifications, again, something I'm going to cover later, are a really good example of this. There's a ton of learning out there. If you had asked me or we talked about this like 2 years ago, I would tell you there's not a whole lot of training out there for AI security specifically. And there wasn't a whole lot of training out there for how you would actually deploy generative AI, which is pretty much the main meal that most people are looking for. People who have some level of expertise in generative AI, even if it's machine learning. And then there's those who are in security in some facet. You could have a completely unrelated job, network security. You could be doing, identity and access management. You might have a job that's all about governance, risk, and compliance. In this context, you want to figure out how you go into a specialization in the field. And this is a lot easier for this category than it is for the other two. What you really want to do is look for those who are involved already. You already have access to the community. You want to plug into those networks. You want to look at the folks inside of your company if you have the opportunity, and you want to try to network. You want to understand what they're looking for. What are they going after? What do I need to do? Most importantly, get really confident in what you want to do. At this point, if you're in the field, you should have a clear idea of what's interesting to you and what's not. Because this, no matter what you do, will be challenging. And so if you're going to apply your effort, know that you can't become a master of everything in this work. So what do you want to do? And then specialize on that and focus on that. You can train, you can certify, and you should leverage your network to kind of give an idea of where you want to go. And this is really a frame of mind or a framework for how to, a mental model rather, of how to think about where you go if you're starting from one of these three locations. And after this, I really think about training, and training is not something that stops. It's not something that stops if you're in the field. It's not something that stops if you're out of it. If you care about this, you're going to want to dive in. It's right now, just to put this in perspective, I spend every night about 4 hours doing additional research in this space every night, including weekends. It does not stop. And the speed with this emerging technology is so incredible that it really takes this kind of idea of it's exciting and it's interesting to you. You need to have some level of personal passion to go after it because it is a fast moving bus. It's very, very difficult to keep up with it. And there's going to be some things you're going to have to develop on how to, pay attention to the things that are important and wash away the things that aren't. You're going to find two strong kinds of groups in the AI space. You're going to find one group that tells you that the world is about to end. The other will say that AI is the salvation for humanity. And neither of these groups are correct. It's definitely in between. There's no technology has ever been this kind of holier than now implementation. It's going to have a significant impact. We're going to be a part of it. And we need people who are pragmatic, who are grounded and level-headed, who can think about this technology in a good, kind of reasonable way. So the way to cut through that noise, first and foremost, is through this training I'm about to highlight. I'm going to bring forward some platforms that I think are really strong. And I'm going to bring forward other ones that I don't necessarily think are great, but if you're looking for options, you're going to have them. So starting off, we have deeplearning.ai. This is awesome. So Andrew Ng is named one of the godfathers of AI, specifically of deep learning, and is the founder of this site. They're deeply integrated into the ecosystem. It's awesome. High quality AI education's here. It's they have great courses on generative AI if you're trying to figure out how to get into it. They cover all kinds of topics in machine learning. They partner with all the providers that exist out there, from AI labs like OpenAI or Anthropic, to cloud providers like AWS, Microsoft, Google. There's deep integration. And they bring in experts that are on the ground doing this now. You'll have the opportunity to do labs. I'm a huge fan. I'm not going to spend as much time stomping my foot on deep learning as I will the other ones. But deep learning, if you really want to get into this field, I think it's important to understand what you're trying to secure. And deep learning AI is a really good baseline to start demystifying some of these concepts. The next one is Coursera. And I kind of put this almost neck and neck with deep learning AI. And the reason for that is Coursera is almost deep learning funnels its material into Coursera quite often. So deep learning AI has a strong partnership with Coursera, puts a lot of content in there, but Coursera also pulls from other sources. What I'll say here is just be mindful. Be mindful of the content that you're about to consume. Look at when it was put out. Try to get a broader view. Use either the reviews on the platform or use other resources like Reddit, X, or Perplexity, which is an AI search tool, something to kind of get some level of sense for the content, how people feel about it after the fact. This is especially true for the next one, Udacity, which is kind of a freelance training program. There are some really awesome hidden gems here, but there's far more garbage than there are diamonds. So you need to be very cognizant of the kind of material you want to consume. Be very focused on something. So if you're trying to cert, maybe Udacity is a good source, and you do want to look at that. But you want to focus, be very focused, and be very cognizant of the kind of material you're going to go after. You have EDX, which partners with top universities. They have a lot of good courses. They have a professional certification from Harvard on AI. These get into much more complex, much more technical, like academically technical work. So this is when we're going to talk about algorithms. We're going to talk about really important concepts around machine learning. This also dovetails into embedded AI, so robotics, and how you can kind of take that to the next level. And then you have a good platform, I think, is IBM Skill Build. IBM is surprisingly really came out of the woodwork in the generative AI space, and I think has kept toe with a lot of the major providers out there, providing a platform, but also providing good knowledge. Whenever you look at a company like IBM, this extends to Microsoft, AWS, and Google, it's really important to know that these companies are going to be pushing their point of view to you. So you're not going to get a general kind of widely applicable view, not always, sometimes, but you're going to get their point of view, how they see the world and how they perceive this technology and how they want you to talk about it. So you might have competing information, and that's going to be something that you also have to reconcile with. How do I deconflict this stuff that I'm learning? And then this next piece, I would say, is probably the most important when it comes to training. And I can't think of something that's really going to help you more than what outside of the deep learning AI. This is going to focus on our cloud platforms. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is when you think about hiring a person for this job, almost always they're not saying I'm looking for someone that's in AI security. They're looking for someone with very discrete skills. They want a specialist. Almost all hiring managers want a specialist. They want someone who understands something. And to that end, you have your three providers. And I'm going to start off with Microsoft Learn, which really focuses on their kind of approach, and then it focuses on Azure. Microsoft Learn is without a doubt, the best training platform from any provider on the planet. There's just no competition. The first reason for that is because it's free. It's really hard to compete with free. The quality of their material is really good. It can often be a little too high level, but it's still really good. And you have two things that you can leverage from Microsoft. The first is their entire Microsoft Learn platform is just free. You can go through videos, you can go through their curriculum, all of it's for free. Then you can take this without paying a dime. You can go into their applied skills track, which lets you get kind of a badge. It's like a mini credential, and it will take you through a training course, and then it will take you into a lab where you're proctored by an actual system. It's pioneered by NVIDIA. I don't have more details. Could be AI proctoring, but it takes you to a lab, and it really wants you to run through a series of steps based on a real case. You'll have to open an email. You have to read an email from your boss. You'll have to see the requirements and then implement them. And afterwards, depending on how you did and how well you followed instructions, you're going to be able to get a badge coming out. It costs nothing. That kind of material is amazing. What's awesome about halfway through 2024 on is we're starting to see the emergence of content dedicated to AI security. I cannot tell you how happy this makes me, because AI security has kind of been the Wild West. We haven't had clear taxonomy or ontology for this field. It's been everything and nothing at the same time. Sometimes it's just cybersecurity with an extra hat. Sometimes it's a whole different function. Sometimes it's adversarial machine learning and more advanced concepts, or it's AI red teaming. Now we're starting to get a really comfortable view of how we can think about AI security, and the industry at large is starting to kind of normalize around this. So Microsoft has a track called the AI Security Fundamentals. It's very high level, incredible for beginners, and it costs nothing. So that would be the first thing I would jump into if you're trying to think about specializing with a provider. You're going to get Microsoft's speak in language. I think the content's still really good. It's generally awesome, and it costs you nothing. And then right after that, you have AWS Skill Builder. Now, Skill Builder is also very, very cool. Kind of the downside with Skill Builder is it has a subscription cost to it. It's relatively cheap. I don't have the price offhand, but their training material is incredible. AWS has some of the smartest and most incredible insights. You can go pay attention to their thought leadership and blogs that they post. They put out incredible content. They also have a course in their Skill Builder called Securing Generative AI, and that will cover really advanced concepts around how you actually secure, what I haven't even mentioned yet, large language models, how you apply things like a MITRE Atlas framework to that space, how you think about OWASP top 10 for large language model applications. And if this doesn't make sense, MITRE is really thinking about the threat point of view. What techniques will a threat actor use? What specific indicators do I have to use to think about how to secure the system from a threat adversarial point of view? When you think about OWASP, you're thinking about some kind of low-hanging general application security risk as it applies to the AI application stack. And so you have these frameworks that are real. Their efficacy varies depending on what your specific use case is, but it's a real practical skill set. AWS Skill Builder, specifically the Securing Generative AI on AWS, is really good for this. And then Google has the Google Cloud Skill Boost, and this provides a lot of information. I'm gonna be honest, I think Google gets hit or miss on this. Sometimes they provide awesome training and it's free. Sometimes it costs something and it's dated. It really depends on what you're looking at. They do have a free course for introducing you to the concepts of security with respect to AI. These are good foundational things. You're not really going to lose anything by doing this. It costs you nothing but time, and you're going to grow from going through the content. And then we think about the training, and it's great, but how do we apply it? So what are ways we can actually take what we've learned and walk away with something meaningful? This is where we look at certifications. I mentioned applied badges from the Microsoft side is one element, but certifications are where you're actually going to go through a formally proctored test in person or virtually, and you're going to have to understand these concepts. And specifically, certifications, for the most part, are going to care about the domain they're focusing on or the foundation they're building from. So you start off with something like the AWS Certified AI Practitioner. This is foundational, meaning this is pretty general. It's going to expect that you understand AWS, that you have some level of AWS understanding, and that you understand AI, you understand some of the concepts around ML, generative AI, how applications can be deployed in AWS. And this is just a starting point. This kind of certification could lead to their specialist certification around machine learning. But it's really great. This is something, as a hiring manager, having a certification directly from one of these providers, especially if I have most of my infrastructure in AWS, it's going to stand out. I'm going to care about this. The next one is from Microsoft. You have Azure AI Fundamentals. It's the same kind of gambit as AWS. You're going to have a level of expertise or a level of foundational knowledge that you can demonstrate with this on Azure specifically, and how they consider their AI stack. So in AWS, you would think about SageMaker and Bedrock as these two kind of important concepts in AWS. In Azure, it would be Azure's AI Studio and their machine learning labs and safety content, safety studio. Like these concepts, these terms, they might have similar capabilities, but they want you to get familiar with their catalog of services. And so this Microsoft certification is a fantastic one to go after as well. And then dipping away from that and focusing on that kind of responsible AI and compliance specialist, this certification from IAPP, called the AI Governance Professional, is incredible. It's a very difficult certification to go after. This is the same organization that pioneers privacy certs and really kind of holds the mantle for leading privacy certifications right now. This certification today, I would not take. It is incredibly difficult. I actually took this certification strictly just to challenge myself, because it goes into very deep ML concepts. It goes into a wide range of AI concepts. Then it goes into the minutia and the nuances of legal laws, legal frameworks, and so on. It's really difficult. They recognize it's too difficult. So in February 15th, I think they're going to be revamping this. And they're going to change it on its face, and it's going to become a lot more appropriate for the content. But if you're thinking about governance in this space, how do I help manage or be a part of a team that manages artificial intelligence within an organization? Incredible. This is going to fall really well in line with your compliance, your governance, and your risk professionals that want to kind of get into this space in AI. When it comes to training, when it comes to the content we've covered, these are all things that are kind of a precursor and prerequisite to getting you going. At the end of the day, you need to meet people. You have to shake hands. Some of the most important opportunities that I've had in my career really came from shaking hands and meeting people. It doesn't matter how technical you are. It doesn't matter how strong your digital presence is. Like if you have an incredible GitHub contributions for the year, if you are killing it with thought leadership and whatever meeting you post in, it really doesn't matter if you don't go out and meet people. Networking is absolutely important. So it opens the doors for people to either share their views, to mentor, to gain insights. Either way, no matter what you do, you gotta go out and you have to go meet people. Now, there are tons of different ways to do this. I'm going to run down some really quick ones. First, you have platforms like Meetup. Meetup helps have local and virtual groups that can be focused on AI security, can be focused on just general AI or applications of that technology. They have local events usually right away in your area. So there's libraries and community organizations that will show up on this platform. Not everything's going to be great, but it's 100% a fast track to get in contact with someone local in your area. A little bit less so, you have LinkedIn groups. You can kind of connect with communities out there, a little hit or miss on whether or not that's actually going to be meaningful to you. You have things like Discord and Slack, which really dovetail into other ways to contribute. These platforms will become important if you want to do things like open source contributions, if you want to do hackathons or learning cohorts. So Blue Dot Impact, and that icon that looks a little bit like a meter is called METER. And these organizations they have open challenges in this space, whether that's around AI's deployment, its use cases, or safety concepts. and you really come together with like-minded people, all kinds of backgrounds, and work on specific things. You might be in a learning cohort. Sometimes, by the way, these don't cost anything. You might be in a learning cohort and you're meeting on Slack, meeting over Discord, and you're kind of collaborating on different ideas. You're going through an official training program that leads to a project at the end of it. Either way, this is how you start putting yourself out there and getting a bit of a connection built and a network established around this community. And it's really, really important for you to start establishing that network if you don't have it. And I'm going to walk through now just some very practical guidance for anyone that's looking for a job. It's a lot, and just get ready here, because this is everything that I would constitute as a best practice. Again, this is coming from me. This is my opinion. This is from the position of a hiring manager and from someone who understands what it's like to go find a job, to be a job seeker. The first thing you need to understand when it comes to AI security in particular is that this market is nascent. It is still maturing. You are not going to find jobs that are just on AI security. You're going to instead find a mix of job titles and responsibilities and expectations. They're going to be all over the place. And there's no shortage of competition. A lot of people want to get into this space. To that end, you need to be prepared mentally to face rejection. You need to be prepared to be delayed or not have responses. You need to be prepared to just deal with silence. These things are not a representation of your quality or your value. It's not. It's just the game you're in. The key to overcoming this is persistence. You just have to push through. You have to keep driving. You have to keep going at the end of the day. And this market, unlike other areas, is new. So it's going to be more challenging to find a role dedicated to AI security than it is in most traditional jobs that have been well established and have existed for a long time. The next thing I would hit on is optimizing your resume. And this is so important. You're going to find that people will put their best foot forward and get discouraged right here at the resume level. I'm going to give you some bullet points that I want you to keep in your head as you think about how I get my resume in the right position. The first thing is we're going to skip having a good resume. Just you need to have a resume that's formatted correctly, has the right kind of content and structure. That resume needs to just on its face have the value. There's tons of people that provide guidance. You can also leverage generative AI. Almost all commercial generative AI solutions from ChatGPT to Claude will give you pretty fantastic advice on how to structure bullets in your resume. Once you have that resume built, you need to format it correctly. It needs to pass the applicant tracking system test, ATS. That is your first barrier to entry. When you submit a resume, it's going to go to an ATS first. If it's not going to be properly parsed, it's going to fall on its face. It needs to be able to be easily parsed. There's tons of tools that do this. Just do a Google search. You'll find something that can help you out with the ATS. It's a very simple, easy kind of check before you go and start putting your resume out into the world. The next thing with your resume is when you're applying to a job, you have to put in some keywords. You want to put in something that associates with the actual requisition that has been put out. If there's a post for a job, make sure, and it's talking about specific nuances in that field, make sure that your resume echoes them. Bring up accomplishments that are adjacent or related to it. But you need to tailor that resume to the job you're posting to. And that can be manual. There's a bunch of different ways to go after it, but you're not going to ever match a job one for one, but you should align to the best of your ability. You should align your resume to the opportunity you're trying to go after. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but we want to focus on highlight your transferable skills if you're coming out from the outside. So problem solving, explain how you handled some kind of complex challenge in problem solving. What did you do when it came to communication? Give use cases or examples of how you applied excellent communication in your day-to-day. What did you do from a critical thinking standpoint? These are all skills that are unilaterally applied to every job. It doesn't matter what the job is. Being a good communicator, being able to problem solve, being able to be independent and think critically, it's going to be universal. These are bullets, if I'm being candid, that you don't really have to change from job to job. They're going to be general and they're going to apply to all of them. If you're looking at more technical things and you're trying to really get specific, let's say you're a software developer as an example, highlight your coding experience and especially in Python, which is incredibly important in AI. That's a great asset that people will love to see. So if you're trying to get in AI security and you're trying to get into this space, saying you have some level of developer experience, you have coding experience is awesome. And then, go out there and take a course on PyTorch and get familiar with some of the more, the other libraries that exist in this space so that you can get some level of understanding for what you're actually walking into. And there's tons of resources that will do this. If you don't have that and you're either an internship or you don't really have any, some people are old like me and they've been out of the game for a minute. They want to get back into it. Get involved in some projects, list out your projects, try to highlight things that are independent of being employed, but show that you are engaging with the community, engaging with the subject matter, and that you can kind of point people to your book of work, if you will, your portfolio, so they can see what you're doing. Hands-on experience is always going to be important. If you can bring that forward, it's arguably going to be the most important thing. I would argue that certification and education, certifications and your education college degree is going to be awesome. It's great. It's a door opener. It's going to help you get forward. If you have a way to get hands-on experience, that's going to take you over the line. That's really, really important. And you get that through some of the things I just mentioned, like open source contributions. If there's any kind of collaboration that you can do, fantastic, super important. And then, remember, it's persistence that matters. So dedicate time every day to the hunt. Dedicate 30 minutes, I say, a day just to looking for jobs. And a little hack here is if you're trying to find a job and you think it's a good fit, eliminate any job that has not been posted in the last 24 hours. You're going to find that if you try to apply to a job that's been out for a week or longer, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of candidates that have just swarmed it. There's a good reason for this. Most of them are not people. They're bots that are kind of doing the job for people. So look for opportunities. There's ways for you to filter, whether it's LinkedIn, Google, Monster, Indeed. Look for jobs that have been posted in the last 24 hours and try to stick to those. You're not going to find some. Other days you'll find plenty, but try to stick to that category. And I'm going to be honest, I have a lot of people who have kind of followed these principles. They've had a lot of success doing this. If you discard that, I think it'd be a huge contribution or a huge kind of leading factor in some of the challenges you might face when it comes to finding a job. But it's a good way to kind of shorten the duration that you're going to have when it comes to looking for that next opportunity. And that's it. That's it, folks. At this point, we can just talk, and I can answer any questions that you have. We have time, and happy to be here. Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you so much, Kris. So now we are open for questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to come off mute or go ahead and use that chat feature, and I'll make sure to facilitate that question out. I do see a lot of great engagement in the chat, folks sharing their LinkedIn, so that's great. A lot of thanks to our presenter, Kris, here. You mentioned that you have been in cybersecurity for quite some time. I did have an opening question here. What inspired you to pursue a career in cybersecurity?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna. No one can make fun of me for this. Okay. So I'm gonna give a bit of a long-winded answer for this. When I got into cybersecurity initially, I had a kind of an innocent view of the world. I wanted to stop bad things from happening to good people. That was it. That was as simple as cops for the digital space in my head. When I got into that work, however, I realized really fast that's not how it works. Instead, and it's still kind of sad, you don't do that. Really, what you do is you can't stop a determined adversary or attacker. What you can do is mitigate the bad and mitigate the damage that might fall out from that situation. There's nothing that is a foolproof kind of wall that you can put up. And that was very discouraging. But AI, and this is really not, be plugging. AI is something that really kind of started turning that ship around for me. Well, the first concept I learned about was something called the artificial immune system. And that is really, as for the field of science, from computer science to health science, we have been able to replicate in an algorithm the body's natural immune system, which is an independent system for the body. And we can think about danger theory and these other concepts about how our immune system can respond not just to things that are coming from outside the body, but things that represent damage to the body. And I always had this vision, this idea that like that's going to be the fix for security. Cybersecurity professionals are overworked and really outgunned. What can we do to like kind of level the field? And I really, more than ever before in my life, do I feel like we're so close to having something that can provide a level setting and kind of equalizer, if you will, for the field. I'm really, really excited about. So I started because I had this really aspirational goal to protect and realized it was really around mitigating some of the harm and let's protect. And now I'm starting to go back to my, initial reasons for joining.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kris. We do have a hand raised here from G John, so I will go ahead and unmute you here, and you should be able to ask your question.
How you doing? How you doing? Um, my question is, what what is it? No, I have a few questions, but my first question is, have you heard of the Deep IBM Deep Blue?
No, I have not. So the IBM stack is something I'm not super familiar with.
Okay, okay. So I'm guessing you you have not heard of um you have not heard of when when they actually be when they actually beat a chess master.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you'll find benchmarks like this all over the place. You like what has AI done that has beat a specific person? You have chess, which is, a long,
Right, right.
long accomplished thing. Then you have things more complex like Go, many more options. But I think we're well past the kind of novel, simple benchmarks. Now we're thinking about how do we actually fool proteins and how do we actually make new medication and medicines and kind of accelerate health science. And there's viral concepts around don't die under the assumption that AI is going to lead us to this place where we can extend life indefinitely. There's pretty pretty radical things going on right now. But
And
keep
my
keep going.
and my last question is, so, of course, we have the adversaries trying to use trying to use AI to attack. Do, do, do you think there are there are people or companies out there right now that is trying to do the opposite for 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 the future and make a AI that will try to pre- prevent those those malicious actions.
Yeah, first, that's an amazing question. It's a great question. The answer is yes. So we can kind of simplify this as AI for cyber and cyber for AI.
Right.
But you have and I'll just repeat your question is first is AI being used by malicious hackers? And second is AI being leveraged to help prevent malicious attacks or kind of provide better protective technologies? So the first answer is yes, AI is being used by bad actors. A good rule of thumb is to think of if it can be used by a innocent um, IT or cybersecurity professional, then it can be used by a bad actor. There's nothing that says that that technology has to be applied ethically. It will be applied and abused in the wrong hands. That's just a kind of a universal law for
Right. Right.
IT and cybersecurity. So in that space, I'll just share a quick anecdote on that. What are we seeing in that? We're seeing attacks accelerate. We're seeing low-hanging fruit that you would expect. What's generative AI really good at? It's really good at providing us text. It's really good at providing really good text now. So phishing attacks are getting better, really robust. We're starting to see more and more of that. When we think about the attacks that are launched, one of the interesting things that are starting to come out is a challenge in attribution. What that means is when we think about attacks, they kind of leave a fingerprint. And that's still true today. It's not the case, but there are an increasing number of attacks that are becoming kind of a bland general view. We don't necessarily have a fingerprint we can look at because of the way these attacks are being leveraged with AI. You kind of get into this monotone position, which is really, really frustrating. You also have a whole different space out a little bit aside from cybersecurity around forensic work and trying to determine the authenticity of media. So there's a whole gamut of things that are happening from the malicious point of view and how that technology is being abused. It's been helping us for well over 50 years. It's been around for a very long time. It's been at the heart of most products today. The kind of new things we're seeing in generative AI in particular is the ability to talk to your security platform. So you have embedded within Sentinel with Microsoft SIEM, as an example, you have Security Copilot, which can look at your logs and alerts and then help you kind of derive from that. Like, here's the attack. I'm going to help you triage. I'm going to help you save some time. It's only a matter of time before we start getting away from this. We have a very clear human in the loop right now that will never go away. But right now, we're really at this point of prompt, get a response back and move on. We're not really using that in a really thick automation chain. That's going to change soon. The models will start taking action on our behalf soon. I would say either in this year or starting next year, we're going to start seeing these protective technologies autonomously protecting organizations.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
no, thank you. Great question.
I can ask more, but I'll stop right there.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your question. Thank you, Kris. We are coming up to the hour here, so we'll take one more, and then rest assured, we will copy these questions down. If we don't get them today, we will make sure to get you guys a response later on. So, hey, Kris, do you have any advice for someone stuck in a help desk looking to transition into cybersecurity? They have some certifications such as CompTIA, Security Plus, and education, but finding it very difficult to make the transition. Also, love the talk today.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. It is no shortage. There's no shortage of challenges here. I don't have a bullet for you, a silver bullet. I think the steps that I outlined in my talk really outline maybe techniques that you can apply in practice. Think about the certifications you have as an example. You have CompTIA. I'm assuming if you have a CompTIA A+, that's a kind of a generalist IT cert. If you have a Security Plus, you're getting into a little bit more of a generalist view on security, which is great. Now, if we think about a hiring manager's point of view, what are they looking for? What does a hiring manager want? Often they're hiring for a very specific need. They want someone to help them with a specific problem. We can kind of jump ahead and get ahead of that logic and just say, hey, what certifications have you got relative to the technology stacks that these companies use? Look at certifications from Azure. Look at certifications from AWS or GCP. Go after certifications that would help delineate or get you into a specialized role. You can also go into more technical stuff and get out there. If you want to get, and again, security is so broad. If you want to get into a technical role, there's really technical tracks, community involvement, get involved in projects. Again, network yourself. If you want a more generalist and you want to get into kind of a governance risk analyst kind of role, there's a whole different track for that. I think it's a little bit easier to break into, but it's, for me, not as exciting. There's a lot of options in front of you. Just kind of review back what I went through here today. I think if you apply those and know it's going to be a journey, there's no silver bullet for this. You're going to feel a lot of rejection. But if you apply the principles of having kind of a strong resume that you've built up, use AI to help you with that. And then you start applying this, like, I'm going to spend every day 30 minutes. I'm going to work 30 minutes to try to get this out there. I'm going to get involved in networks. I'm going to go meet with people. You don't have to be a specialist. You can come in completely cold and just put a face, out there and say, I'm trying to break in. I'm trying to understand. There's nothing wrong with being who you are and being 100% humble about that. people will resonate with it far better than if you try to, create a facade about who you are and your skills.
That's an awesome answer. Thank you so much, Kris. We are at time here, so I do want to be respectful of your time. I know we have a lot of great questions in the chat, so we will make sure to note those down and get you guys an answer. So we'll go ahead and wrap up today's session. Thank you everyone so much for joining us and for all the engaging comments and LinkedIn shares. Kris, you shared such invaluable insights into starting and building a career in AI. And you sparked a great discussion about the opportunities and challenges in this exciting field. We will make sure to send this recording out along with a brief survey. I'll share Kris's LinkedIn as well. I know he posts great articles and resources. I think you also have a website that you linked on there, so you'll get links to all of those. Perfect. And then we also want to extend a huge thank you to you, Kris, for sharing your expertise and for inspiring the WGU community with your passion and your leadership in AI. Your time and knowledge are greatly appreciated, and we look forward to continuing to learn from you because it sounds like we're going to have you back. So everyone's just loving your
Thank you.
expertise here. Yeah. Thank you to all of our attendees so much for joining us today. Be sure to check out Handshake for future sessions. Our YouTube channel will post all of this recorded content there, and we hope to see you at future sessions. Wishing everyone a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.